The Washington Post recently reported on a story that's 100% off the radar of the mainstream media. And I have to admit, it's an issue that I was largely ignorant on as well, at least in terms of the scope of the problem. They say, quote, "Cops are seizing property and cash from motorists driving on American highways without charging them with any crime. The victims are forced to either forfeit the confiscated property or go to court to prove that whatever valuables the police seized were not obtained during the commission of a crime. In many cases, the legal battle to regain property can take a year or more." So, police are essentially seizing property, specifically money, and then they flip the burden of proof and say, no, now it's on you to prove that this is yours. So I'm just going to take it. I don't have to prove that I need a reason to take it. I'm just going to take it, and then you need to prove that it's yours. It's highly questionable, especially in a system which deems people as innocent until proven guilty. But for whatever reason on this specific issue, they are able to flip the burden of proof. Now, why is that? Because they hide behind the idea that, well, we're seizing this property because it's part of an official investigation. And if you don't like that, well, look, you still are able to possibly get your money back. You just have to go through this very long, hard process to reverse it. It's incredibly nefarious and egregious. They say, quote, "In total, more than $2.5 billion has been taken from motorists who were never charged with a crime since September 2001. Not surprisingly, a disproportionate number of these seizures affect minority and foreign drivers." Well, isn't that a story we've seen time and time again? That minority communities, and in this case foreigners, are targeted, and the reason why they're targeted is because the police assume, well, these people probably don't have any powerful connections, any people in high places, therefore, let's stereotype the fuck out of them and just take their property and tell them if they want it back, they have to go through this incredibly difficult process. $2.5 billion. Isn't that amazing? Quote, 298 police departments and 210 police task force groups now fund at least 20% of their budget with seized cash and property. Almost 62,000 people have had cash or property seized by out-of-control police. Look at those numbers. 298 police departments are at least partially funding what they do with money they just flat out stole. I mean, call it what it is. People can try to do this little ridiculous tap dance and say, no, it's different because they're wearing a badge. It's not any different. They are robbing people and then using that money to basically, fund their departments, or in some cases, they even go as far as putting it in their own pockets. They get their own cut of it, which is an insane incentive because you're basically legalizing this one group of people to rob other people. And they're hiding behind the idea that they represent law and order as they're violating the idea and the principle of law and order. So they say the problem has gotten so bad, quote, Canada's CBC published a detailed article September 11th, 2014, warning Canadian citizens not to talk to the police, not to consent to searches in the United States, and most importantly, not to carry large amounts of cash with them when traveling to the U.S. Let's pause there. Canadians are being told, hey, avoid U.S. police and do not consent to searches because they are that corrupt. Shouldn't the United States of America be embarrassed about this? Like, that's one of the things, living in the U.S., being American, okay, basically being a townie, I would call myself, in New York, okay, we really do live in our bubble where we don't realize, or I don't know, we get numb to the fact that there are different countries, and different countries see what's happening in the U.S. too, and then they make judgments. And one of those judgments is, like I just described, where Canadians are told, no, the American police are corrupt. Don't cooperate. Don't cooperate. Now, when you tell that to other Americans, they're like, whoa. But this is what's actually happening in the country. Another example of this. I have a few listeners in Australia who've reached out to me and they said, no, you don't get it. There are some politicians and elected officials here that say, hey, don't go to America. You might get killed in a mass shooting. Again, people in America, we don't realize, like, yeah, we see that we have a lot of mass shootings, but we always think, even within the U.S., well, it's not going to happen to us. It's not going to happen to me, because for whatever reason, I'm just that much more special, and I don't apply to the 32,000 gun deaths on average every year in the U.S., which includes everything, by the way, suicides, accidents, homicides, you name it, right? 32,000. But other countries, when they see those numbers, they go, whoa, dude, yeah, be careful when you go to the U.S. Might get shot. But we don't realize, because we're Americans and we're in this bubble, and we don't hold ourselves to the same standards that we hold other people to. So we could look at other countries and go, primitive second world and third world places, not as civilized as us. But there are other modern countries looking at us like, the Americans, they're fucking crazy. Police stealing shit from people, $2.5 billion worth. Don't you dare comply with their police. And when you go there, be careful, because you might die. You might get shot. You think maybe it's time for us to change some policies around in order to make our country better, so we could do this radical thing like forming a more perfect union? I know, call me crazy. But think about it. What would it take? So let's focus on this issue specifically. What would it take to limit the corruption in this respect? Well, number one, as I've argued for as long as I can remember, if you end the drug war and you at least decriminalize drugs, I'm in favor of legalizing, you guys know that, but look, I would compromise in the short term and say, okay, let's just decriminalize, right? If you do that, if you get rid of the drug war and, change around the drug crimes drastically to the point where you can't arrest somebody if they're doing a drug, okay? Right there, automatically, boom, the police get much more popular in terms of their approval rating, in terms of their likability, because then they can't harass you for having the freedom to put in your body whatever the fuck you want to put in your body when you're not hurting anybody else. Okay? If you've ever watched the show Cops, half the things are about drugs, and you're like, these fucking assholes, stop fucking with the poor guy. Whatever, maybe he has a medical problem, so he's smoking some crack. Get over it. Oh, they pull over poor black kids all the time smoking weed, and then they lock them up. Like, what are you doing? Now, this is why people are angry at you. This is why they don't like you. You're just harassing these poor people. Okay? And then the other half the time, the cops are heroes. They're stopping assaults and domestic violence and battery and yada yada. It's like, why don't you just get rid of the shitty things you do, the drug war, and keep doing the good things you do? So if you do that, end the drug war, and then number two is just, at the federal level, pass a law, say all cops need to wear a camera. That's it. All cops need to wear a camera at all times. Then what happens? Then they're going to self-police better. They did studies on this recently. There's a few areas that have already tested out this theory. The police abuse reports drop tremendously when they have to wear a camera because they know they're being watched. So they're going to act better. So end the drug war and make all police wear cameras, and then I guarantee you this would be affected too, the blatant stealing of money from poor people. I mean, look, these are such simple things that would drastically change the country for the better. But, of course, we're shouting into the wind because honest, common-sense proposals almost never gain traction and never get through.